So I've written 2 books. One is on Megadeals, available on Amazon, etc., what have you. It's at least a Swedish bestseller. I've also written a book about how to forecast government budgets. I almost became an econometrist like you. I did some work for the Swedish government, but it was a bit too geeky for me. I've been working as an advisor for some of the largest organizations in the world, but also quite a few scale-ups. And I founded, like Richard said, a few companies as well. And one worth mentioning is actually here, not just by myself. So Wirén is sitting in the corner there. It was at least going throughout everything, basically, in Swedish media yesterday. So it's mine storage, where we take surplus of electricity from wind and solar. We pump water from the bottom of mines up to mine lakes, and we release it back a few hours or a few weeks or a few days or a few weeks later. Very, very interesting technology and use case, and definitely in the megadeal space. So what is a megadeal, and how can you describe a megadeal? So there are a few characteristics, because you might think, oh, it must be only the multi-billion-dollar deals. But selling is shifting from selling, like me to Luis or me to one of you, into orchestration. So you orchestrate deals when you have the criteria I will soon show you. Whereas if you convince just a small bunch of people, it's traditional selling. So, and orchestration was not covered in any literature. And I've been talking about and working with this topic for almost 15 years. So we're the first book talking about orchestration. And the first one is that when you're selling into either an ecosystem of organizations, like many impact startups are doing, it's not just a customer. You need to convince someone owning land, you need to convince a political body like a municipality or a regional government or even a state government, sometimes even multi-country governments. Or you're selling into a matrix organization where you have several countries, several business units, so it's no longer so easy to get a bunch of people in the same room. The second criteria is where decisions are anchored cross-functionally. So it's not just going into sales or finance, it's going across a few functions. And when it's going cross-hierarchy, and many people have sold to larger organizations, they make the mistake to say, well, this is Luis' budget, so he makes the decision. But for example, sign-off levels, for those of you that have been in large companies, you know that the sign-off levels of the amount you can sign off is really low. Like $100,000, that's a pretty high title. You're probably at the C-level to get a sign-off of already that small amount. So most things, especially in the sustainability area, they are not small ticket deals. So you need to be able to sell to the top, and sometimes you don't meet them. You need to know how to do that. And when your offering is complex, and you're selling into a mix of processes and technologies on the customer side, when you have all of these, you actually have a problem. Not only do you need to orchestrate as opposed to sell, but you have a problem that I'll illustrate soon with a quite well-known character. You might know of him.
What motivates you? Fear or the feeling of wanting to conquer or be successful?
What motivates me is the unknown. No one knows. You know, they can all speculate, but no one really knows. And you know, when you look at my career from high school all the way up through through the pros, no one knew what Michael Jordan was capable of. And myself, I didn't know. But I didn't let that stop me.
So when doing these complexities, fulfilling all these criteria I showed you, there is a worldwide rainmaker dependency. And it's not just existing in the portfolio companies you're having or in our organizations that you soon will see. It's even in the IBMs, the Ericssons. Do you know how many people within Ericsson, at least Sweden's largest company, that are the rainmakers in that organization out of 5,000 commercial people? Any guess? 3? That was pretty close, actually. 6? 30? It's 4. So you were pretty close. So we asked 40 people independently, which individuals in your organization are pivotal when making your largest contracts? And the 40 people pointed at everything from 3 to 5 names, but 4 of them were consistently coming up. IBM has the same. We studied IBM, Morocco's largest deal ever. They had to fly in a Swiss guy that ran the orchestration. And in smaller companies, you see this typically around a founder or a scientist, so there is a bottleneck somewhere. If this person is not a part of the most important meetings, it will not go well. Can you relate to some of your portfolio companies? It's a pretty big, actually for the climate, it's a big issue. So before letting the panelists come in, I'll share with you the recipe on how to scale. I mean, the recipe, some of it. So the solution is actually not to train, to bring in more deal makers and train them, because that has everyone tried for ages, and it doesn't work. That's why IBM hasn't cracked it, why Xerox, Siemens, Tata, why they haven't cracked it. So instead, you need to do something else. You need to take away, much like with a doctor. So let's say Carl is the doctor and I'm the patient. So he's coming in, he's being briefed on the way to the surgery room. He comes in, all the tools are perfectly lined up, all the documentation is done. The nurses are there, some assistants are there. He's coming in, he's doing his thing, and then he's going out. So the first thing you do is to take away, and especially for us Nordics, this is hard because we don't want to treat people like stars, but you actually have to. So take away all unnecessary tasks from the 1 or 2 rainmakers in your portfolio companies. This is serious, it's important, especially in the northern European countries. We're very equal, so everyone should do their receipts, everyone should book their trips. No, that is not the solution. You need to free up time from your rainmakers. And the second one is to scale the rainmakers through marketing. So it's actually better to have a video of Kenny in a meeting than having the 7th best salesperson, because they do such an appalling job that they might stop the sales process. I'll share with you 5 insights that we'll spend most of the time on in a while. First, to present the panelists, a few words. Kenny?
Yeah. My name is Kenny. I'm the CEO for a company called HPSolartech. We are in the business of solar energy, where we are developing and building and selling large-scale solar parks. We are based in Sweden.
Yeah. And you just made a deal of 50 million euros?
Yeah, exactly. So we recently closed a deal worth 50 million euros, which was kind of groundbreaking for our company, because it was like a deal that was 10 times the size of our current revenue last year. So we are a bit of a scale-up right now, you can say.
I'd like to comment that is important. So some of you might think, well, my portfolio companies are never going to make a mega deal. But when we have looked at the biggest B2B companies in the world, what made them big was exactly that. They made 1 or 2 or 3 mega deals that transformed them. So what Kenny just did with his organization is such a step. I also want to make another comment. So they are the pioneer in solar parks that are made into clusters. So many, many small parks, like computer servers. Before it was obvious to have a big computer server. Now it's obvious to have many in a cluster. They do the same in solar parks. Yeah, Carl?
I'm Carl Berglund. I'm the commercial director of a company called Landmark Power Holdings, which I recently joined. It's a London-based developing company, so we develop, own, and operate power plants. And we recently closed a quite large round of funding in order to build the first 2 projects in the UK as a starter. So it's a quite early stage company. We're basically a startup, around 10 people.
Great. Ulla?
Yes, my name is Ulla Brockenhuus-Schack. I'm running Seed Capital in Denmark. We are a tech, not an impact, but tech venture fund, investing from seed stage all the way to exit. And we have about 500 million euros in asset under management. I think that if I try to put Megadeals in perspective, it's probably a few of our companies have complex sales where it could be a very relevant tool, but also when we do financing of companies, when we get to B, C stage funding, but also in terms of exit, I think some of the tools are very useful here.
Right. And for those, I mean, most of you are from the financial community. So Thomas Westin, head of Nordics for Goldman Sachs, is in one of our podcast episodes talking about what Ulla will share today. So some similarities between the financial megadeals and the B2B or B2G megadeals. Jesper?
Hi everyone, I'm Jesper, the founder and CEO of ENJAY. ENJAY is a green tech company based in Malmö, Sweden. And if you look at real estate owners around the world, actually all buildings, when it comes to housing and offices, are recovering their energy from the ventilation. But still, real estate owners around the world, they throw away billions of euros every year because it's not possible to recover the energy when it comes to polluted airstreams, such as restaurants, laundries, mechanical industries, so on and so forth.
The Burger King air.
Yes.
That's polluted.
that is very polluted with grease.
Which is one of your
soot.
clients as well.
Yeah. So, and that is until now, of course, because we have developed and patented Lepido, which is the first heavy-duty heat exchanger in the world that can survive in this environment and recover all this energy without any pre-filtration or running maintenance, saving obviously all of this money for the real estate owners, but also a great deal on saving the climate. I'm very happy to be here.
Perfect. Welcome,
Thank you.
dear panelists. So I'll cover 5 points. These are the 5 biggest insights from studying and working with large deals. The first, and soon the panelists will share stories connected to these 5 insights so you really understand them. The first one is that in order to get a big amount of money from a client, what you're selling needs to match a key initiative. In bigger organizations, and some of you have been in those, the bigger pots of money are earmarked to 3 to 5 big initiatives. And unless you fit a key initiative, you will never get more than a pilot. So sometimes you actually need to exit the customer discussion if you don't have a fit. Because the worst thing, apart from losing a deal, is actually to do a pilot and then not proceed. That's actually the worst. I think you agree. The second point is to understand and map out the ecosystem around the deal. And here we typically are too focused on who's owning the problem and who's owning the budget. We need to think bigger, cross-functionally, cross-hierarchy, but oftentimes stakeholders outside of the buying organization. Like, who's the biggest shareholder? Which strategy consultants are they using? Who has invested in them? Was it Luis and the guys? Can we influence Luis, right? And the third one, which is the hardest, that is how we drive consensus at scale. Again, we're no longer selling, we're orchestrating. We need to drive a consensus agenda. That we cannot cover today because that's the hardest part. The fourth one is connected to Trojan horses. So most people in sales talk about the champion. So if I want to sell into an organization, who's my champion? Who is taking my topic big time into the organization? The Trojan horses is something different. They're typically further down in the organization. They share information with you that is pivotal for you to close the deal. But they might not tell their colleagues that they're in favor of you. And all Megadeals we've interviewed, actually without exception, have said, if we don't have many Trojan horses, we're not getting the contract, because who's got them then? the competitors. And the fifth one is actually the most important, and I think Kenny can relate, connected to the last 50 million euro deal. So if you can mitigate the customer risks, you can actually charge a lot of money. So some of the best mega companies in the world, Siemens, Tata, etc., they are absolutely crazy good at mitigating risk. Not just for themselves, but for the client. So now to the fun part. Who wants to start? Do we have any situation or story connected to key initiatives?
Yeah, well, I have some.
Okay.
So I can start. So we are obviously also touching base with stakeholders, but one of our stakeholders is end customers, where it is we started in restaurants and working with the big fast food chains. And one of them is Burger King, where we landed a fairly big account having an exclusive rights on the Scandinavian market. And coming to the key initiatives, we kind of thought a bit ignorant from the beginning that we are coming with a product that doesn't exist yet, that they actually know of, that they're wasting energy. We save them money and we save them environment. We thought it would be a no-brainer. But it turned out when we started talking to the top management, they weren't really interested, because we were maybe top 20 on their priority list. It didn't hurt enough to them. They had bigger issues. They had the operations in the restaurants and handling how many cucumbers there should be on the hamburgers and everything about their customers' experience of the company. But what we did find was that within the company, there are different stakeholders when we come to this mapping up. So the facility management, they actually had an obligation to cut their CO2 emissions. So when we started talking to them, we were actually in the key initiatives on top 3, because that was really hurting for them, because they had to cut their emissions, and until we came, there was no solution to do it. And we could offer them, obviously, a solution for the headache, but also make it profitable for them, because there was a saving in it. So it started, with the key initiatives within one organization. On the facility management, it was fairly easy.
Yeah,
it's
so when you found out, you can accelerate your deals.
Yes,
yeah.
But then obviously when it comes to the retrofit, when it's top management, they have other key initiatives that we need to look into.
That's quite common. So Ulla?
Yes,
thank you, Jesper.
If we just move over to sort of a perspective from a startup company wanting to raise a new round of financing, I think that alignment of initiatives can be translated into make sure that you do your homework before you reach out to investors. Are they investing in this geography? Are they investing at this stage? Are they interested in this space? And then also understand, what have they done of other investments? And I think that, my mailbox and phone are often scattered with people who just randomly send out, and it's so annoying. I really do think that if you want to raise money to your startup, spend time and do the right, so that you make sure that it's in alignment with what this investor could be looking for.
I love that comment, because it's so relevant. So it's very similar to the B2B and the B2 investment side, because if you now it's maybe, thank you for that example, because most of you are from the investment side, it's equally important on the B2B side. So if I get like a fundraising proposal, which is not the same, but if I get this proposal from Jesper, and it's not on my top priorities, it's just a waste of time.
And another perspective is at the point of exit, I hope some of you will get there or are there, and you need to sell your company, or it's being ripe for that. Understand and have nurtured who the potential buyers could be. You might want to engage an advisor, but over the years up to maturing for an exit, understand what these companies are looking for, what M&A activity have they been doing, what are they communicating, to make sure that there's at least to some extent a fit with what they're looking for.
Yeah, totally.
Can I give you an example?
Yes.
I mean, we sold a company, a fitness app, Endomondo, to Under Armour. And people were thinking, why would Under Armour buy a European fitness app? Well, here we have a sports brand that was very popular in the US, then at least.
Now it's popular here too.
and they had no brand recognition in Europe, and Endomondo had hardly any revenues, but they had 20 million European sports users, and they used that as a platform to promote and introduce Under Armour to Denmark.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
To Europe, sorry.
Great.
So it's just sort of that it's not necessarily always the most obvious fit. But try to think about the key initiatives and see how that could work for your company.
Before we move into the next point, so there are 2 points on this list that are really easy to implement. It's number one, make sure that your portfolio companies have that on their list, on their sales meetings. Do we have a fit with the key initiative or not? If the salespeople cannot answer that, they need to start to answer that. And the second one is number 4. Constantly look for Trojan horses and know how to deal with them. That's pretty easy to implement as well. Great, thank you, Ulla and Jesper. So I know that both of you can decide who wants to start. Both are into understanding the ecosystem and how to drive consensus. Who wants to start?
I can start.
Okay.
If you want. Yeah. Absolutely. The ecosystem in the type of deals we do within the energy sector are often pretty complex because you have a lot of different stakeholders that you need to be in contact with. You also have like third-party stakeholders who are coming in and review your information that you also need to understand how they work. But at least in the end, you also have like an investment committee that you never will meet. And those people, they are the one who takes the final decision. And it's really important to understand who do I get to them? How do I get the right information to those who actually do the final decisions?
Yeah.
And,
anything energy related is ultra.
Yeah.
Number 2 and 3 are huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Carl?
Yeah, exactly. I spent the past 5 years at the clean tech company called Engman, and we sold typically to large organizations. And I remember when I started in the maritime industry quite early on, we faced these huge cruise industry ship owners that basically are 25,000 people. And ecosystem there can be 5, 6, 7 different entities. But in the beginning, as a fairly young company, when I joined 5 years ago, we were typically speaking to a few people at maybe 1 or 2 of these, so having a good relationship and thought that was enough. But when we realized quite early on, because we were promised a deal, we thought we had a deal in place quite early on. We had some good progress with 2 or 3 people, and then nothing happened. We didn't get the deal. We didn't understand why, or we did understand why because we hadn't done our homework. So we went back looking at who are actually both formally and informally influencing the decision, or who could potentially influence the decision. And it ended up in 6 entities in 4 different countries. So basically going back to doing our homework and start building relationships in all these entities to make sure that we can control as much as possible going forward in the sales process.
And here on number 2 and 3, you really need to use marketing. Actually, so we worked together for a while. I remember we wanted to enter Maersk. So some of you are Danish, so one of Denmark's biggest companies. So we ran a lot of heavy marketing towards Maersk. We used your face, my face, and the third guy's face. I remember the first time we went to see them here in Copenhagen. We were back then like 30 people or something. And a lot of C-level and VP titles met us, and they're like, "Oh, we're so glad that you have time to meet us." We're like, "Is this candid camera?" Like, we had created such a media presence towards Maersk, both with ourselves and the company, and what we would do for the marine industry, that they were like, do you have time to meet us? We're like, you're the biggest shipping company in the world. You're on top of the list. But yeah.
Yeah, but, and to add to that, I think it's that's critical in a sense when you're facing a company of 20,000 employees, and we were a team obviously, but still you won't be able to meet every single one of the people that actually can influence a decision whether to choose us or something else, because status quo is the biggest competition you have as a clean tech company, early stage clean tech company, and marketing from that sense is key to influence throughout the sales process, sales cycle, people that you don't get to meet, along with some of the other points that we get to later on as well.
Yeah, exactly. Kenny?
Yeah, I was just to fill in that it's really important because when we made the last deal for our company, we were pretty small, so we didn't. I mean, we were basically 10 employees, so we don't have the resources to run this deal because we also need to focus on our current business. It's a pretty big chance to go for a large deal because you can also fail. I mean, and if you do that, well, you have spent a lot of time with a lot of resources with not succeeding. So it's also like you need to understand the internal ecosystem as well to really have them on board to support you in this and really try to get them to understand what's in it for us to do this.
Yeah, I have a client
and give you the support when it's needed. So for me, example, I was more like you were telling earlier, more the orchestrator of the deal. Who should come in and when, and what information should be sent where, etc. So
one of our clients, they had a possibility to make this kind of leap that you just have made. But there were so strong internal forces against it. So the leadership wanted to do it, but most of the employees thought it was completely crazy. And even though we were involved, they lost the internal politics. Even though the top management wanted to take the leap into a huge deal, the organization was blocking it. Yeah. Cool. So anyone who wants to share a story on Trojan horses?
Sure, there's plenty. On my way here, I was thinking about which to pick, but Trojan horses in general. Maybe you want to introduce what a
I can explain the beginning. So they're typically, so if you're in a meeting, for example, let's say we have a meeting, and Ken is completely silent. The other ones are talking a lot and debating a lot. But then at the end of the meeting, Ken is saying, I can follow you to the door. And on the way, he starts to talk and he's sharing information. So he said, so Laura wasn't here. She's really important for this deal. Just so you know, you're competing with this company. So a Trojan horse is like an informer. And you think that they're illoyal. They're actually not. They score very high on engagement. They just think their bosses are too slow. So they want something to happen. They have too little formal and informal power. So their way to get their way is to share information with the potential winners.
Yeah. Now, so going back to basically the example that I was mentioning before, facing a large organization, I mean, being able to, as you said before, the Trojan horses are typically the people mid-management or even lower sometimes. If you get a few of those on your side that will promote your message throughout the organization, but also feed you with information so that you can prepare accordingly when you actually meet the top stakeholders as well. That is, to me, key in any large and complex deal. I had a situation, or going back again to when we were selling to one of the largest cruise ship owners in the world, we built quite a few Trojan horses in these different entities along the world, and we were just about to have everything in place to finish a deal. And then at the end point, I got a call from one of my Trojan horses saying that so they made a decision now, top management, they went for another alternative, not a competitor, but another alternative.
Yeah, another category of solution.
Another category solution, yes. And I was like, we've done our homework, we mapped all the stakeholders that we know, we have our Trojan horse, we had several. And I was like, what went wrong here? And then I found out that there was this guy within this organization we call him Mr. K. He was like a rock star within the company. Any decision or any technical decision always went through him. He was not necessarily involved in the decision process, but he needed to sign it off.
He needs to vet it.
Yeah, exactly. And he was sort of untouchable. Nobody could get in contact with him except for a small group. So I was like, what are we going to do now? So I booked a ticket to Miami, where the headquarters was. I sent him an introduction, just saying that I'm there, and if 5 minutes for a coffee, and don't ever underestimate playing on someone's ego. So I pumped his ego a little bit and saying that I'm there. I would be happy to go through. We made a research about why we would be the better choice, basically, than an alternative.
Did you tell him that you flew for his sake? Flew over for his sake?
No, I didn't actually.
Okay.
I said I'm going there because I'd set up some other meetings as well. So I said I will be there. Do you have 5 minutes? Then I'm happy to meet you. He didn't respond to that, but what happened is he triggered this email, sent it directly to other key stakeholders, apparently, that we were not aware of. So he set up a meeting for us to meet them, and we hadn't met them before. And from that point, when we entered that room, there was a Norwegian guy, and I thought, it's like, okay, Norwegian, you guys beat us in skiing, but do you really have to kill a clean tech Swedish deal as well? No,
Did you
just
say
kidding.
that?
No, I'm just kidding. No, but this guy was spent 25 years within one of the classification societies, the ones that certify the equipment that are allowed to be installed on a cruise ship. And he was very conservative. And for him, it was a matter of our annual report, how we would scale the company, certification, and some of the running hours that we had on our equipment on other vessels. Well, that was his key. So I needed to risk mitigate in that meeting.
Right.
And after that, we could progress again.
And did you win it?
We won it, but unfortunately it was stopped by Corona.
Oh, right.
So it was actually, this was in about a year and a half ago. So it's unfortunate and obviously not controllable. But I was confirmed by 3 different people that we got the deal, but we were too late into Corona.
Great. Let's touch upon customer risk. Any volunteer?
Yeah, I can start.
Yeah, Kenny?
Yeah. I can take an example from the recent deal that we made with the solar park industry. We were a pretty small company, and obvious thinking from a buyer perspective is, okay, will you be around here for the next year or 2 years or whatever? I mean, it's a pretty big risk to go into a large deal. A lot of things can happen. So basically what we did was that we structured the deal within milestones phases. So we got paid in a way that we could secure that we could deliver the milestones, but in a way that it was less risky for them and less risky for us. So
that's one of the beauties with the clusters. You can deliver it server by server.
Exactly, server by server, and they can basically stop the project anytime they want. They can just build one cluster or one server, and if it's not working, they can basically cancel it. And by that, they feel secure that, okay, let's go for this.
Yeah, great. Ulla?
So if you're a startup and you want to sell into a very large company, you have to be aware that for them it's a high perceived risk. They don't know if you're there tomorrow, and you might consider partnering with somebody that could give you that, or the customer, that safety. It's just a thought, because very many startups, of course, are not all surviving, and if it's a mission critical for the customer, they will not buy with an early stage company.
True. And also, I think most of you can relate. I'm both running this advisor, but I'm also an investor. So when I meet a potential investment and they say that there are no risks around their company, I just go, okay, great, thank you. I'm not listening more. So it's the same in a B2B or B2G deal. You need to mitigate risk, but you need to also be transparent about the risk that's still on the table. Otherwise, no one will ever believe you. So, Jesper?
Yeah, I was just going to refer to that, because I think the most important thing for a startup, but for any company actually, is to be completely honest with yourself. So never lie to yourself. So when you do the work of risk mitigation, because obviously there are always risks. Yeah. I mean, it could be risky for our potential customer investing their money in our product, as you said, if we are not here for another in 2 years or whatever. Yeah. But there's also risk in the technology. I mean, we have created technology that no one has been able to do before, but many have tried. So obviously there is a risk. Is it really working? But I think that as long as you're honest to yourself and you just spread out, yes, there are risks, and you are open-minded and honest to the customers as well. So, obviously try to find out what the risk they see, but also try to...
But even tell them in advance. These are the risks that you will see.
It is better to tell them in advance and just have an explanation for it.
It's a bit like the difference between finding out that a friend lied to you as opposed to your friend telling you, I actually lied to you, I feel so sorry about that, before you find out. I mean, none of them is good, but the second one, where they tell you in advance, is more trustworthy. So they will preserve the trust even though they lied. Whereas if you keep it hidden and then the customer finds out, then you lose trust. I mean, we can talk, just, you know, we can talk about these for a few days.
Sorry, I want to go back just quickly on the Trojan, because the Trojans, they are not always only within the company you're working with.
That can be a consultant or something.
Or we had with Burger King, actually our main Trojan was an HVAC contractor, because their company did all the installations for Burger King. So they have all the insight, and they were really eager to do this. So we had them on both sides. We had one Trojan in, so
So I want to end this slide before we go into the next insight with a quote. So it's actually coming from the guy on the left there, Bora. So he says that value and unique selling points, they are bringing you through the door. Risk mitigation is closing the large deals. And it's super valid. Actually, both investors, salespeople, marketers, we're trained at thinking differentiation and value, but risk mitigation is the killer. Great. Another insight, actually this is connected to Michael Jordan. So since we can't copy these four, we need to scale them. And therefore, what you see is in the leading organizations that have a key people dependency, they're very heavy on marketing spend. They spend an equal amount of money on marketing as they spend on sales. This is super important insight. And also, they spend, so a lot of organizations that are behind, they're just generating leads, and then they give the leads to the salespeople. But if you have a Michael Jordan situation, more leads just give you more headache, because then the rainmakers are working their asses off even more. So marketing needs to work throughout the entire funnel. So comments from you guys, both on the marketing spend and also the balance, not just leads, but actually marketing, you commented on it already, like throughout the entire buying cycle. Any?
Yeah, I mean, we are working like that. We have, and it has nothing to do with drinking, but we have a 12-step program where basically marketing is working as an air force for the foot people with other salespeople. But then also when we get the leads in, it's important to get them in what we call a 12-step program. So basically they get content from us all the time to make the work easier for the salespeople, because we are creating converted customers who are buying without the salespeople being there all the time. And that comes from the marketing part that goes, as you say, from the very beginning. And actually, the risk mitigation is part of that, closing the deal at the end.
Yeah, that's true. And what I can see from the Megadeals Advisory organization point of view is that this is actually one of the biggest leap we have to help clients with, because they're very trained to generate leads and then just go, good luck, sales. So it's a big transformation to actually make marketing both bigger, but also deal-centric, so run marketing throughout the funnel. So, Kenny?
Yeah, I can also say, I mean, we have started with this concept at our company, and we can see, I mean, we have more or less, when I started, we were like 12 sales guys in our company. Today we are 3, but we are still selling more than those 12 did together. And of course, that will give us a huge impact on the revenue side.
Yeah, great. Super. Carl, you want to add something?
No, I think it's just general comment. I think a big challenge for many of the clean tech companies, they started to get better at that, but it's engineers starting
it's very science-oriented.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the biggest challenges is that marketing is not a typical thing that you think of, rather
It's like,
invention or
if you
the
produce it, they will come.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think they're becoming better, and I see that. I agree with you, Kenny, as well. Looking at if you find some key people that can drive the large deals and rather support them, and if you add someone on, then you can help them. You cannot copy these people, but you can help them a lot throughout marketing as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So
There's
they
a
give them 2 assistants and push marketing.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and I mean, send the right message in the right time, and etc. So that's really important.
So, well, Ulla, so these are some. Ping me, and I have a ton of resources of the book, but there's a podcast, videos. Ping me, and I'll send you stuff. Ulla?
Yeah, I just want to round up saying that for an early stage company, chasing mega deals can be very, very risky because you know, you can't time when it's going to happen. It's going to cost you a lot, and in the meantime, maybe you have losing focus on what could pay for your rent. So if you want to pursue mega deals, you have to have a well-funded company. That's one thing. The other is make sure that you you document and you capture how much it's costing you, so that you understand your unit economics. Because that's critical if you want to grow the company really big and you need to get additional funding.
That's a good point. So we typically come in either upon funding, and sometimes we're even part funding it, or like 1 year later when the investor is realizing this company is not performing, it's totally dependent on someone like these, and we've just realized that. We thought they were scaling through this, because normally in a due diligence, a rainmaker wouldn't admit that they are pulling the weight because it's scaring off investors, but that will be obvious. So we sometimes come in when there's kind of the sales curves like this, and then we need to find a way to scale it. Any questions before we leave the stage?
Crystal clear.
Crystal clear. Yeah. Well, thank you for this short time. This was a trailer. There's more if you want. Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you very much for being here.